Welcome to Vegan Business Talk with Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, journalist, media trainer and editor of veganbusinessmedia.com, the multimedia blog providing success tips for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. In this episode, I interview Jeremy Johnson, owner of Vegan Perfection in Melbourne, Australia. This is another audio interview I did for my book, Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Now, Jeremy's interview will be particularly informative for those of you interested in importing products internationally and also getting products into retailers. Jeremy became vegan while he was living in the UK. When he moved to Australia, he was initially frustrated at the lack of products available, so he filled a gap by starting Vegan Perfection, whose core business is as a wholesaler and distributor. So there's a lesson there already about filling a gap in the market to achieve success. In this interview, Jeremy talks about the importance of being proactive. Instead of waiting for clients, and in Jeremy's case retailers, to come to you, you must go to them. And that might fly in the face of attraction marketing, which is a buzzword right now, but it goes to show that you have to do what works for your particular business. How Jeremy coped with an incident where the company's first import shipment nearly proved to be a disaster and what he learned to avoid similar situations occurring. The dangers of growing your business too quickly, especially if your startup capital doesn't support the level of growth, and much more. Here's the interview with Jeremy Johnson of Vegan Perfection. So tell me a bit about your why, Jeremy. What's your drivers for running Vegan Perfection?
I guess that's a little bit of a moving feast. Originally, it was the idea was, I guess, born out of a bit of a frustration with what was available to vegans in Australia. I became vegan when I was in the UK, and it was I found it a very quick and easy transition from being a meat eater to a vegetarian to a vegan, because vegans were very well catered for in the UK at that time. About a year or two later, I moved back to Australia from the UK, and that's when I sort of found that Australia was very much wanting for good vegan food producers and good vegan food products. So I guess it was probably partly selfish reasons to start with. It was just sort of set about rectifying that sort of bit of that lack in Australia. And I guess since then, the why or the goals have changed a little bit. Not only nowadays, it's not only we want to cater to vegans and give vegans access to good quality products, but we want to show people that you can live an indulgent lifestyle as a vegan. So, as well as catering for people that have already converted to veganism, trying to show people that are possibly thinking of the idea or had the idea in the back of their head that living a vegan lifestyle doesn't mean living without. You can live an indulgent lifestyle while still being ethical and living to your own moral code.
Fantastic, lovely. Now, Jeremy, am I right in thinking you don't so much manufacture items? You're more of like an online shop that stocks a lot of brands. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't do any manufacture at all. We import most of our product and we distribute it all around the country. So we're an importer distributor primarily.
Yeah.
So we distribute to 300 to 400 stores around Australia, and we have a couple of distribution partners in some more remote areas.
Okay.
And
you also sell direct to the public online.
We do. We have an online shop where we sell direct to the public, but it's a very small very, very small part of our business, primarily.
Is it? Right. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I didn't realise you supplied to other stores and let alone so many. So that's fantastic.
Probably 95% of our business would be supplying, wholesale, and also to distributors interstate.
Fabulous. Because one of my questions was for the food manufacturers is that some of them say, because the raw materials cost more, obviously the products cost a bit more. I just wonder whether you find that in terms of distribution, whether you maybe find it a bit harder to perhaps get into non-vegan stores because the vegan products are a bit more expensive, or is that not really a problem for you?
It's not a problem. It's not really a barrier for entry. Because the retailers tend to know that the product will sell at the higher price. The retailers generally are not taking on vegan product out of the kindness of their heart or because they are vegetarian or vegan. Generally, they know that there is a market for the product, so that they will stock it. And unfortunately, with the vegan product still being, I guess, for want of a better phrase, still a niche market with a very small percentage of your sort of standard or everyday market. The products obviously selling to a smaller audience means that the scale is not as big, and therefore the production costs are much higher. So whether the product is manufactured in Australia or whether it's manufactured overseas, they generally tend to be more expensive than non-vegan products, and obviously then you've also got the additional expenses of importing product and distributing product, which can be pretty considerable as well.
Right. How do you go about overcoming that challenge? Is it a case of sort of convincing, the retailers that, this is a growing market, it's kind of almost maybe a bit hip and popular now? Is that something you sort of share with them to encourage them to take the product?
It was very much at the start. It was very much a hands-on approach where I went and visited stores, probably more than once, some of them even 2-3 times, to get them to sample the product as much as possible. That was probably the main thing that I tried to do when I first started. Was all the products that I used to eat in the UK that I loved. I made a point of getting it into the mouths of the people that I was trying to get to put it on their shelves. And generally speaking, they were able to recognise that they were high quality products, that they were very tasty products. A lot of them couldn't believe that some of the products were vegan, as you would expect. And that was sort of the key to convincing them to give it a go, I guess.
Brilliant. That sounds like a very good strategy. I think that's always the way, particularly with food, is to actually get people to taste it. Absolutely. So that they can have
no doubt. And also an element of persistence as well. If I had approached them once and sort of, gone away and waited for them to initiate something, possibly it wouldn't have happened. But sort of making a point of, if I didn't hear from them, going back and seeing them again, and I think giving them the impression that I wasn't just a fly-by-night sort of thing that was going to be around for 6 months and then disappear, because with their businesses, at the end of the day, they run a commercial business, and if they're going to take a leap of faith and stock a new brand of products or a new range of products, or they're going to move into the vegan market, they need to know that those products are going to be around long term. For them, if a product disappears after 6 months and they've devoted their shelf space to it and they've given time and everything else to it, it's probably the worst thing that can happen, because then they've got empty shelf space they need to fill with another product that they then need to establish. And it's almost without exception that a product takes some time to develop. It's very rare product that just runs straight off the shelves the minute it's introduced. It's sort of usually a bit of a slow burn, and the retailer plays quite a part in that. They have to be patient. They have to be willing to lose the occasional bit of stock for the bigger picture or the longer term. And it's part of the challenge to convince them that you're going to be around long enough that they're going to have a long and successful relationship with you.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say? I mean, you kind of, so you touched on it a little bit in terms of what some of your key challenges are when first starting up your business. And I guess, as you've mentioned, it was possibly making those initial contacts and establishing yourself as trustworthy. Were there any other challenges?
In the industry that I'm in, which involves a lot of logistics, temperature controlled transport, those sorts of things, there's a lot of potential for problems, and it's almost inevitable that issues will arise at some stage. And in our case, they hit straight away. Our first shipment of stock that we shipped from the UK all got destroyed because it was left out on an airport tarmac in Dubai, I believe, by a careless forklift operator. And
wow.
So that was one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced, basically right there at the start. And we managed to just survive that and get through that. But generally speaking, it's just the logistical issues were the biggest ones for me, were the hardest thing to overcome, because again, it goes back to that relationship that we would build with retailers and with the people that consume our products, where they expect a steady supply of the product and they expect it to be in good condition, high quality. And if you have suppliers letting you down, or if you have freight forwarders or people that are involved in the logistical side of things letting you down, then that's basically going to pass on directly through you to your customers and to your retailers. And we don't supply to supermarkets and big corporations, so we had the advantage that the people that we were dealing with that own these businesses were people. They weren't just companies. So they're a little more understanding than what, say, a big supermarket would be. But their patience only extends so far. So,
for sure, yeah.
Probably the biggest challenge is trying to keep everybody happy. As the old saying goes, you can't keep everybody happy all the time.
Yes.
You just have to do your best to get as close as possible to that.
Had you had any experience in this sort of area at all before, Jeremy? Like, importing products, getting them into retailers, or was this like a brand new venture?
Yeah, I had no experience whatsoever. I'm an engineer by trade.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I had a complete career change. Basically, when I started Vegan Perfection. So I just learned as I went, basically, and learned some tough lessons along the way. That incident that I talked about a little while ago was a lesson learned.
What did you do? What would you say are the key lessons learned? Because obviously that was something you couldn't really, I guess, control. It was someone being careless. What did you do then to put in place to avoid that happening in the future?
I just tried to take more control over things myself, so that I put my faith and trust in people, and I still do, on a daily basis. But I think I just identified pretty quickly where the areas of greatest concern were, and set about trying to get those under as much of my control as possible, so that I had a lot of input into how things worked, rather than just relying on somebody else's word that, yes, this will happen, don't worry about it, it'll all be fine in the end. I basically broke things down into minute detail rather than just accepting that things would be fine. I wanted to know the reasons why it would be fine the second time around when it wasn't the first time around. And,
got it. Great. Okay. Cool.
And it's mainly about, in my case anyway, it's not necessarily as a general rule, but it was a lot of the time it was about being very dogged and persevering as far as you have to, whether it's dealing with suppliers or logistical people, or, as I mentioned earlier, dealing with retailers. You have to persevere, and I would be very surprised if there was any startup venture out there that didn't encounter some fairly significant problems, if not early on, but at least at some stage of their existence. And really the only way to overcome those or to get through those times is just to persevere and ride it out and either wait for things to get better or just make things better yourself.
Great, I like that. No, that's some really, really good advice there. That's fantastic. So in terms of some of these questions actually that I emailed to you, I don't really apply to you because because you import. That you've said your main business is actually importing, and I'm guessing are you like the only or one of the few companies that does what you do, like import specifically vegan foods?
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain, but if we weren't the first business that did it, then we're fairly close to the first. There may have been a couple of others, I think, that were in existence when we started up. I think importing product from Asia primarily. But we were the first, I think, that really started importing product from the UK and Europe and those sorts of places.
Great. So you've not got a huge amount of competition?
Well, it has grown a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. So there's been, I would say, a deluge of good quality vegan product that has sort of landed on Australian shores in the last 4 or 5 years. I think we've been going for about 4 years, and we were not the only one, but one of very, very few businesses that were doing what we do. Now there would be, I'm not sure of the exact number, but there would be, I would say, at least half a dozen that are doing very similar to what we do.
So how do you stay competitive then, Joe? Like, how do you sort of convince, businesses, retailers to do business with you and not the others? So how do you manage to sort of stand out, I guess, from the others that have come into the market?
Well, a lot of it, particularly when you're talking about wholesaling and distribution, a lot of it's about the relationship that you have with those retailers that stock your product. You obviously have to have good products that people want to buy and people want to eat. But you also have to have a very good relationship with the retailers that are going to stock your product. And the best way to do that is to give them very good service. And they want products that are going to sell, and they want products that they'd like to stock. But equally as important to them is the service that you give them. If you give them prompt deliveries with that aren't riddled with errors, and you don't run out of stock on a regular basis and everything else, then I think you become known for your reliability in the industry, and you build a reputation around that. And it definitely enables you to remain competitive in the market, regardless of how many new products come out and how many new items come out that are in direct competition with items that you already sell. A lot of the time, if you provide the service, the retailer will stick with you because it's not always that easy for them to get that level of service.
Got it. Well, a lot of marketing gurus nowadays say that actually businesses should just stop thinking about having competitors altogether and think of them as collaborators, with whom to do joint ventures. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think is it unrealistic? Is it, what do you think about it?
Well, I'm not sure about today's approach, but for many years, a couple of my brothers work in the financial world and very knowledgeable about these sorts of things. And they've told me for many years that don't ever fear competition, because what usually happens is it just creates complementary markets. It expands the market. And it's not necessarily the case that your product will automatically be replaced by the newer and better products. It usually will be the case that the market will expand and they'll make space for both products. So I certainly don't see new vegan products as competitors to our products. I see them as just another way that the market is going to grow and expand. And I think we all benefit from that. The people that have the businesses, I think, benefit. And obviously, the consumer benefits because they get a wider choice, and obviously the planet and the animals benefit. For every new vegan product that's out there, there's hopefully one less non-vegan product. So obviously it's better for animals and better for the planet. And that's ultimately the goal that I think anybody that's doing what I'm doing or doing something similar to what I'm doing, whether they're a manufacturer, whether they're an importer, a distributor, whether they're a retailer, or whether they're involved in campaigning on a daily basis, we're all working towards the same thing ultimately, and that's a compassionate world where animals are treated with compassion and treated equal with humans rather than treated as commodity.
For sure. In terms of mindset, you already touched a little bit on this when you said some of the qualities that you need to be very persistent, very, very dogged. What sort of steps or strategies or techniques do you use to sort of ensure that you've got a strong mental and emotional well-being as a business owner? Because, there's a lot of stress going on. Like you said, you suffered that right at the beginning, your products all being ruined. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, so much to do. What sort of things do you do to cope with that, to ensure you've got a strong mental and emotional well-being as a business owner?
I just concede the fact that I'm not going to have a strong mental and emotional well-being.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I wish I could give you some words of wisdom on that front, but I think from my perspective, there have been many times where I've just felt like all I wanted to do was give up and stop doing what I do. Feeling, overwhelming frustration and disappointment and other negative emotions. But I think at the end of the day, and it's a bit of a cliche these days and it's bandied about a lot, but if you're passionate about what you're doing, you can overcome pretty much anything if you believe in what you're doing and the goal that you're working towards, then you can overcome those obstacles. And I think a combination of two things basically, that I am a very dogged individual. Once I start something, I generally always feel the need to finish it. The second thing is, I think if I'd set up a business that I didn't believe in so much, that it didn't mean so much to me in terms of my own moral and ethical beliefs, I would have probably given up a long time ago. But
yeah, that's really important. I think that whole why, if your why is strong enough.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, if you get into something like that as a means purely to make money, then it won't end well. Because I'm not saying that you can't make money. You can make a living from ethical and vegan business. There's no doubt about it. Unless you go into it with the right reasons, it's never going to sort of have a great outcome, because there are always going to be challenges, and it's not just vegan businesses that face challenges. I think every business and every commercial entity in the world faces challenges on a daily basis, and sometimes they do become overwhelming, and sometimes you do feel like just walking away from it. And obviously in the world in general, a lot of people do walk away from those sorts of situations, but their motivation might not be as strong as what my motivation is, because my motivation is born out of my own personal, my own personal ambition for the world, which is obviously for the world eventually to see the light and see the error of its ways.
Fantastic. Oh, I like that. What, if any, Jeremy, have you ever used any kind of professional help over the years to grow your business? So I'm thinking in terms of, whether you've hired anyone for something like business coaching, marketing, publicity, any of that kind of thing?
No.
You haven't, okay.
Yeah, there are a few reasons why. Yeah, it's hard to describe that one. I think because particularly when I first started, because veganism was not hip and not trendy and not particularly well known in Australia, I think I had it in my head that business professionals wouldn't be able to understand my business sufficiently to be able to help my business. That, again, they possibly would have thought that this was a flash in the pan. It would burn out as quickly as it sort of started up. And from that perspective, I sort of avoided mainstream advertising and avoided dealing with professionals that coach, do business coaching and that sort of thing, because I was trying to forge a different path. And from that perspective, I didn't think that there was anybody out there that had the experience that could really help me to forge that path, I guess. I think
that makes sense.
I had to walk it myself. If anything, I think my greatest mentors, for want of a better word, that probably weren't mentors in the strictest sense of the word, but people that I could rely on for advice and those sorts of things were some of my first suppliers who'd been in business for quite some time and were running ethical vegan businesses. They were and are great people, but they had a strong business sense and a strong business acumen in the way that they ran their business. They ran vegan businesses and ethical businesses and businesses that they were proud of personally, but they also ran commercially viable ventures, and that really drove it home to me that one of the most important things that you can do is to have a commercially viable venture that is ethical and it is vegan, so that other people can look at it and say, oh, okay, it's not just a little flash in the pan niche market, it's something that is here and here to stay. And from that, hopefully, it just grows and continues to snowball as it does.
How did you manage to get your business to grow? So in terms of, raising your brand awareness, I know you mentioned you didn't do sort of many mainstream paid advertising. Was it sort of more word of mouth or sort of within the vegan community that you sort of...
Yeah, there's a lot of word of mouth. We do targeted advertising in, particular publications that were geared towards the market that we were appealing to. And we also made a point of diversifying. So while our business is called Vegan Perfection, and while my wife and I are both vegan, and while we only import vegan products and would never import anything or would never sell a product that was non-vegan, we diversified into other markets such as dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, nut-free, those sorts of things, which enabled us to grow because we weren't reliant on one particular sector of the market. Without a doubt, vegan consumers, I'm sure, are our biggest audience, but we've picked up several other sort of groups along the way, if you like, and
cool. Oh, that's great.
So diversifying, I think, was one of the key factors in that.
Excellent. What would you say, so for people, as you mentioned, you're an engineer and this was all new to you, what would you say to people nowadays who, someone who aspires to owning their own vegan run business, what in your opinion are the key things they need to take into account before making the jump from employed to self-employed?
Pretty much the stuff that we've already discussed, but there's going to be frustration along the way. There's going to be disappointment along the way. But the positives and the personal satisfaction that you'll gain out of the journey will far outweigh those negative aspects.
What about in terms of how they can get it? Because a couple of other people have said to me, to make sure that you've got enough funding in place, whether that's from a loan or investor or part-time work.
Startup capital is absolutely critical. If you start with too little, it's almost financially almost impossible for the business to last long term. Cash flow is a challenge for every business in the world, I think, whether it's a small vegan business or a large, medium-sized company. Cash flow and finance will always be the biggest challenges that you face. And from that perspective, if you don't have sufficient startup capital, you're swimming upstream right from the start. And it's very easy to run out of money.
Did you carry on working part-time, or did you have some saving? How did you fund your business to begin with?
No, I went in feet first, and from the time the business started, I've been full-time in the business right from the very first day. My wife was also full-time in the business from the first day as well. So between the two of us, we'd given up all income streams and sources of employment to focus solely on the task of starting and building the business. We lived very frugally and for obvious reasons, we had to save every penny we could, and for the purposes mainly of funneling any pennies that we had into the business to keep the business going, number one, and then hopefully growing the business as we went.
Yeah, got it.
So we were sufficiently capitalised, but we were only starting as a very small venture. So we didn't allow things to grow too quickly, or we didn't have ambitions beyond what our capital would support. And that's one of the reasons why we managed to get through those first couple of years. We had some tight scrapes along the way, particularly when our first batch of stock was destroyed. But we managed to get through that, and that's the critical sort of point, I think, is the first 2 years. If you can survive those, then you can usually get some sort of system into your business where your cash flow doesn't look after itself, but it sort of becomes a little bit less of an issue. It never goes away as a problem, but it alleviates a little bit once you're established and once you've sort of got established products and established customers and that sort of thing. But without any shadow of a doubt, if you don't have sufficient capital, then it's going to be extremely difficult to make it work.
Yeah, no, it's really good advice. Thank you for that. In terms of the use of the word vegan in your marketing material, so obviously it's in the title of your company, Vegan Perfection. So some people say, you should steer away from that because it scares some people away. And the other thought is, no, it's very clever niche marketing. So just tell me a little bit about your choice of going right from the beginning with, the word vegan in the name of your company and your marketing material.
Well, when we first sort of devised the idea of starting the company, it really was two vegan people wanting to do something that increased access to vegan products for people, increased people's awareness of veganism, promoted veganism in the best possible light as an indulgence lifestyle, not one of denial. And I don't know, a lot of people probably be right in saying that we were possibly a bit naive, but I think when we were first thinking of a name for the business, the word vegan was always going to be in there. It was a matter of what we were going to put with it. It was always going to be vegan something or something vegan or whatever combination of words it was going to have the word vegan in it there. And I think, basically because veganism is something that's was and still is so close to both mine and Rebecca's hearts that, it was something that we probably didn't give enough thought to when we first started, to be honest. Maybe we could think of other options that didn't involve the word vegan, but I think we were so dedicated to the vegan cause that it never really entered our minds that the word vegan wouldn't appear in the business name.
It's interesting, because I interviewed another company that had got the word in it, and they actually said now they kind of wish they'd called their company something else now. So it's kind of interesting, so I was curious.
Yeah, well, there are times where I have thought that as well. But I don't see it as something that would hold a business back, particularly with the growth of veganism worldwide, particularly in westernised countries, in Australia and the US and the UK. I don't think having vegan in your company name really holds you back anymore these days. I mean, in less sort of advanced countries, that could be the case, but I certainly don't see it as an impediment to our business.
Got it. So just in terms of marketing and getting stuff out, we talked about how you'd grown somewhat through, obviously vegan community type publications or whatever. Have you used media, as in editorial, getting coverage in the media in any way as part of your sort of PR strategy at all?
We haven't actively thought out anything like that. We've been approached by a number of publications for advertising purposes, but also for to supply product for them to evaluate if they're doing comparisons of a particular category of food, and we've always been more than willing to get involved in that sort of thing, because we think that one, that our products stack up against any non-vegan product, and number two, that those sorts of publications that were approaching us, the sort of publications that our target audience at the time, particularly when we first started, would be reading and paying attention to.
Right. Gotcha.
We didn't sort of do any sort of editorial stuff as such. We were certainly willing to supply information, product, and everything else to other people that were interested in sort of featuring either us or our products. You'd be mad not to, but it's not something that we sort of went out of our way to seek out.
Cool. What about social media? Are you active on any particular social media platforms, and which of those have you found to be the most successful?
There's no doubt in this day and age. When we first started back in 2005, it was a little bit of a different paradigm. We've been probably a bit slow keeping up with the advances in that sort of area, but we have had quite a degree of success using Facebook, obviously, which is probably the main one that most people would use for that sort of thing. We do monthly newsletters and a couple of other little bits and pieces here and there to try and keep our consumers and our loyal customers informed about what we've been up to, what we're doing, where we're heading, and everything else.
So Facebook's the kind of key social media platform that you're using and that you're having success with, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And have you found it's been a difference since they changed their algorithm a few months ago, so that they only show posts to a small fraction of your fans unless you pay to boost the post?
Yeah.
Right. And do you pay to boost the posts, or do you just keep trying to come up with engaging content and put it out there organically?
Yeah, we don't pay to boost.
You don't. Okay. All right.
The Facebook page that we run is probably a little different to most other businesses, which we tend to be in most areas, to be honest, where we don't just run one advertisement after another for our products or our business. We have a lot of content on there that is of interest to people, that has little or nothing to do with our business, but is of interest to people that are looking for, and that are possibly like-minded to us, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's a smart strategy. I think a lot more businesses will be, serve themselves well to do that.
Well, I think it would be quite easy. I'm a consumer myself at the end of the day, and I know that I can become cynical with people, constantly trying to push a message down my throat or something like that, and trying to constantly sell me something. And every day that I look at Facebook, and someone trying to sell me the same thing in a different guise every day of the week. I think, it sort of gets a bit much for people. I think it's just a constant barrage of advertising for one's business or one's products.
So that was Jeremy Johnson from Vegan Perfection. You can find out more about Jeremy at veganperfection.com.au. And you can find that link on the show notes page at veganbusinessmedia.com/podcasts. Now for our roundup of vegan business news. 3 students from the University of Alberta have taken out the grand prize at a food innovation competition for their vegan gelato creations, reports Veg News. Biota gelato is made from a selection of beans that are fermented to create a creamy base. The students exhibited 3 flavours: maple walnut, passion fruit and dark chocolate cassis. The young entrepreneurs receive an all-expenses-paid trip to the Institute of Food Technologists' annual meeting and food expo in July to showcase their products to companies and investors. Exciting stuff. And it's all happening on the gelato front this week. Gelato Blue in the vegan-friendly suburb of Newtown in Sydney, Australia, announced on its Facebook page that from 26th of March it is ditching dairy and going entirely vegan. The ice cream store has been slowly phasing out dairy after becoming aware of the devastating impact of animal agriculture on the environment. As of next week, coconut replaces cow's milk, meaning the ice cream is still super rich and creamy, while cruelty-free and planet-friendly. So Sydney's certainly leading the way with regular eateries veganising. Last year, Gigi's Pizzeria went vegan, followed by Soul Burger, and now Gelato Blue. I'm loving how business owners are starting to really understand the impact of animal agriculture and are being bold and brave enough to make changes to become conscious, ethical companies. And I'm particularly happy because I live in Sydney and I'm really enjoying our city being one of the leaders in this area. So fantastic news. A classic car dealership has teamed up with a vegan food business in San Francisco to offer a unique location to consume tasty food. Hella Vegan Food Truck, I love that title, Hella Vegan. Hella Vegan Food Truck is set to serve food at its first bricks and mortar location at Classic Cars West Beer Garden, reports SF Gate. The eatery will be incorporated into the car dealership, which also hosts art exhibitions. So it's a pretty cool sounding space, and it's great to see vegan food being served up in such creative settings, and really lovely to see these kinds of collaborations happening. Finally, more big news this week following last week's launch of the Plant-Based Foods Association, which is representing vegan voices at the table in Washington. Now the Good Food Institute has launched this week. With renowned activist Bruce Friedrich at its helm as executive director, the Institute's aim is to increase the amount of quality plant-based products in the marketplace by working with companies to expand their reach into more restaurants, grocery stores and food service outlets. The Institute recognises the need to make meat alternatives cheaper and as easy as possible to access to make it a no-brainer for people to choose the ethical option. Among the initiatives the Institute is carrying out are hosting events at universities and colleges to attract more scientists, entrepreneurs and investors to the plant-based food sector. The Institute has teamed up with New Crop Capital, a $25 million venture capital fund that will invest exclusively in plant and culture-based alternatives to animal agriculture, as well as technology platforms that make plant-based eating easier. New Crop Capital is focused on angel, seed and Series A investments with the goal of creating as robust a plant and culture-based marketplace as possible. This is so exciting. We really are in the midst of a vegan revolution. We've got a real chance to make a dent in people's consumption habits and moving them away from animal products towards plant-based products. And as I say in my talks on vegan business, we've got to make it as easy as possible for people to access vegan products and services. And certainly the Good Food Institute is now a major player in ensuring this happens. You can find out more at thegoodfoodinstitute.org, and I'll be reporting updates on this organisation's progress. So that's it for this episode of Vegan Business Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please consider giving it a review and a rating on iTunes or any other platform you're listening on. I'm Katrina Fox from veganbusinessmedia.com, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.